Prime time. Prime time. Prime time. What's up, everybody? Nova Nation. I know that's not, we're not talking about Colorado, but we are talking about Villanova basketball. And I am here tonight for episode 2. And I got my good friend and co-host with me, Chris Murl. Chris, how are you doing, sir? Missed you on that first episode, but very happy that you're here with us tonight.
Well, thanks. It's good to be back. Appreciate it.
We are going to talk a lot about different things when it comes to the Nova Nation tonight. So we got a very packed show. But before we get started and bringing on our first guest, I gotta just real quick talk about our sponsors, Off the Rails Media, the Coaches Box. That's where you can see us and watch this. Hopefully, if you are tuning into a YouTube channel, you're on the Coaches Box YouTube channel. Subscribe there, hit a like button for us, hit the notification button so you know when we are going to be live and being broadcasting. We are going to try to do this every single Wednesday night around 8ish. So hit the notifications button so you are notified of when we're coming on. But I just want to say thank you to all the guys, Chris Miller, all them guys for putting us on, and we appreciate it. So go subscribe to that page, and let's get things going on the Coaches Box YouTube page. But had to get that in, and I want to get into our first guest that we have on. Very special guest. I've known this gentleman for years. I know how much of a Villanova fan he is. He is the owner director at Liberty Lake Day Camp. We have this in common, Chris. He went to Hofstra University, so share that together. And his son, Justin, was a former student manager of the men's team underneath Jay Wright. So please give us, Nova Nation, a big round of applause for Andy Pritikin. Andy, how are you?
Hey, what's up, guys?
How are you doing? Thank you for coming on and spending some time with us.
Listen, Nova basketball means a lot to me. I vividly remember being probably younger than Lucas and watching, the big upset against Georgetown with Rolly Massimino. That was one of the most exciting things I had ever seen on television, as a kid. And it really, really sparked me into getting into basketball.
So were you always watching Villanova as your area team, or?
No, it was not, because I'm from North Jersey originally, and it's not like you have a team in North Jersey. You have no team, right? So so I was just a typical like Duke, North Carolina, like whatever was on. St. John's, I got into during the Chris Mullin, Walter Berry kind of years. But I could not help but be unbelievably blown away by the basically the Jalen Brunson teams, right? That won those 2 championships. The last one I was watching, I watched all the NCAA games they played, and I I'm in my mid 50s, and I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen a team that was just that devastating, that could shoot and pass and rebound and play D and hustle. Like, I mean, what was the average margin of victory in that NCAA? Like they beat everybody by 20.
Yep.
Right. It was crazy. So when my son, got into Villanova and then got the gig to be one of the managers, I didn't realize it was a freaking cult down here. Jesus, South Jersey. I had no idea.
Now you mentioned about Justin becoming a student manager. You used to stop me all the times when we saw each other at camp. A lot of different stories of the interactions that he had with Jay Wright and the players. Can you share real quick a couple of those stories of?
I will, but I was also warned by Justin not to break any confidences.
Oh yeah. We'll keep it very. We don't have to go into details.
He had to sign a serious non-disclosure agreement when he agreed to be a coach. But of course, Jay's done, Justin's done. So what can really happen? But I think one of the biggest interesting things about it is that most people see Jay Wright, they meet Jay Wright, they hear his interviews, and he's just the most squeaky clean, like polite, nice guy. And I'm not saying he's not, by the way. He really is a lovable, sweet guy. Okay. But when he gets into the practice, area with the team, like he goes full Bobby Knight. like full Bobby Knight. Like he is as old school gets. And when they had when Justin and Jay had their first meeting, when Jay was convincing Justin to be a manager, which is so funny to think about it, and Justin finally acquiesced and said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." Jay was like, "Okay, I just want to warn you that I sometimes get angry during practice, and I'm not like the guy you see right here kind of thing." And Justin was like, the first practice, like 10 minutes into the practice, a player who did not last past his freshman year, we'll call it that, during that season, I think that was the 2018-2019 season, was slacking, and Jay grabbed the ball, he slammed it to the ground, blew his whistle, and just goes right up to the guy and goes, "You are an effing pussy. That is right." And he just starts screaming at him. And Justin's like, "What do I do? What do I do?" And one of the other managers just looks at Justin and says, "Just don't laugh. Whatever you do, just don't laugh." Right. And he made the whole team do sprints. And he was running up next to that player the whole time going, "You are," screaming at him, And he was like, "Holy, who would think that this guy turned into such an animal?" But that is the old school way of doing it. And think about it, Rob, Chris. Like how many coaches can even get away with that these days?
Right. You can't anymore. That's
right. Think about what happened to that guy at Rutgers.
Yep. Mike Rice. I got a funny story real quick.
He does camps.
Well, he doesn't do camp, but he's a part-time coach for Lucas on the Shore Shots.
Shore Shots, yeah. That's a New Jersey-based facility in the Jersey Shore. That's a big AAU community.
We went, just real quick. We were at a practice, and he commands both courts. So he's talking. Every other word out of his mouth is either F or whatever. And then he turns around to all the parents, because most of the parents there are in shock. I mean, I kind of know him just from past experience and reading about him and seeing him. He just turns around and he just starts smiling. And he goes, "Listen, if any of you guys have an issue with curse words, you better go sit out in your car." He goes, He just warned everybody. He goes, "I love your kids. Do not get me wrong, but this is the way I talk." And
it's tough love. That's the thing. It's tough love.
It is.
And which kids nowadays, frankly, just don't get enough of. This is from Andy, the camp director. Okay. But I just got to tell you a quick story. When I was in 8th grade, I went to the Princeton University basketball camp run by Pete Carell. Ooh. And it's the same thing. Pete Carell is like this little lovable old man teddy bear. Oh,
cigar.
Oh my God. He sat us down under the basket, and we're a whole bunch of 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And he was just letting them rip. He was freaking out, cursing us out like there was no tomorrow. It was like nothing I had ever anticipated.
I want to talk about this year's team because they did have that one game. And Andy, you reached out to me, and actually Chris reached out to me too after that first game. Chris, let's start real quick. What do you think about that first game, and what stood out to you? They beat American, obviously, that they were expected to win. But I know Andy sent me some things about that game and what he saw about it, and it got me kind of thinking. So, Chris, what were your thoughts first?
Yeah, so just real quick, I had 4 things. I was surprised it was only a 10-point game at halftime. The deficit seemed bigger. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I guess the biggest thing is the impact of all the kids from the transfer portal. That's the first thing that you have to acknowledge. Also, Armstrong in the starting lineup. Mm-hmm. I wasn't expecting that.
No.
No, because I felt that they would play the kid from Maryland, Hakeem Hart.
Yeah,
I thought he would have been starting ahead of. That was an interesting choice, and also that it was a pretty solid 9-man rotation, whereas last year and prior with Jay, it was a much shorter bench. So those were my biggest takeaways. I mean, it was a blowout win, and there's always good against a non-conference, mid-major team. But that was just my immediate takeaways from that.
Andy, you mentioned, well, Chris mentioned Jay Wright.
Yeah.
You have a couple of more real quick things too about, because
Well,
I'm always,
yes. I'll tell you my thoughts on the game first, because I want to tag on to what Chris said, because I do agree with him on some things. First of all, the Armstrong thing, like Justin Moore is not a point guard. He only played point guard because Colin Gillespie graduated. That's the only reason he was playing it last year. So I think it's great that Armstrong. I think that kid's going to be all Big East. I think he's awesome. And the 4 transfers, amazing. I mean, Burton is a stud. I mean, that guy, he's going to average 20 a game. We haven't had a guy like him in a while. Forward that could play like that, right? And if you remember what the Providence team was like last year, that won the Big East, right? They were half transfers. And it was sort of that kind of vibe. And these guys are just going to come in and make a tremendous impact. And yeah, we only played 7 guys last year because we only 7 guys that could actually play. Like, it was bad. It was a bad situation last year. And think about it. Arch averaged 21 minutes a game last year. Okay. He was the 11th man in last night.
I believe it was.
Yeah.
It was crazy, right? They played 10 guys before him, and it wasn't because of any reason except talent, frankly. It's so great to have such a deep bench. I mean, Trey Patterson didn't dress. I don't even think he would have necessarily got in, Like they got so many good forwards now. I mean, so much height, so much because he was overweight and his attitude was just bad. He just didn't have that killer, that whole Nova. I mean, you saw did you see the highlights of all those guys diving across the floor and stuff like that?
I posted that on Facebook. Yes.
Amazing. That is the Nova attitude right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they redshirted him, and he could have been like, forget it, I don't want to play basketball at all. He could have been like that, but he turned it around, and now look at him. I mean, the guy's in unbelievable shape, right? Takes the ball the hole. And think about the trajectory of the teams that we've seen now in the last 4 or 5 years, okay, since they won the championship, right? The first year, Justin's freshman year, Eric Pascal and Phil Booth were warriors. If they didn't step up, that team would have been terrible. Everybody left, right? They graduated, or guys went to the NBA, like half the team, right? I mean, DiVincenzo was the 6th man, and he went to the NBA, right? And then, after that, then Dada got hurt. Quinterly didn't work out. Antoine had injuries, right? Justin Moore had his big injury, right? Sadiq and Jeremiah went to the NBA quick, right? If those 2 guys had stayed, they absolutely would have won a title. They could have been on that Final Four team. We would have destroyed, Kansas, right? So, yes, Colin Gillespie deserves so much credit because, Jay used to talk about it all the time and used to say it in small groups, used to say it when I was, there with the team, that having Colin was like having a coach on the floor. It really was. And you saw the big difference last year when he was gone, that, there was nobody. And what my son tells me is that the big thing is that Colin held people accountable, right? You had a player that held people accountable. And last year you had these nice guys, like Caleb and Slater and stuff like that. Nice guys. They were not the kind of guys that were going to get into somebody's face and be like, you are not stepping up, and that was a huge thing. So to me, the years after Jay left, before he quit, those were unbelievable coaching years. Right, for him to be able to have won those Big East titles and get to the Final Four and all that kind of stuff with really a ragtag team with a 6'8" center and no backups, right? With Jermaine Samuel, okay, who was up and down, right? Slater, Caleb, these are not stars, right? These guys are good, solid players, but they're role players, So to me, it was super impressive. And just one last Jay Wright story is Justin said one of the greatest things was when Jay got to coach the USA basketball, that the stories he would then tell the team, that he would blow a whistle and sit them down and tell them about, what it's like to be with these like all-timers and how hard they worked at things and all that kind of things. But one of the funniest things he used to always say when people were slacking on defense, he would start making Dame Lillard jokes.
Nice. Well, listen, you had mentioned about the leadership part of the game, and I had mentioned this to Chris too, because I'm really high on Mark Armstrong, and I'm hoping it's not just because of his physical ability, because I definitely think he has a lot of talent, but I'm hoping he does take that leadership role. And it's funny you bring up Gillespie, because that was really the last time that we had that true, real leader. Who are you looking forward to watching maybe step up this year and maybe taking that next step?
Yeah, well, absolutely Armstrong. And then, like I said, these guys, these fifth-year guys, Burton and Bamba and Hart, they came here to win.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys had accomplished careers at their other schools. They were leading scorers. They were starters for, 2-3 years, those guys. They're coming here not to screw around. They're coming here to get some championship stuff. So yeah, I was just super impressed with Burton. That guy's a serious basketball player.
From Richmond, right? He was, I think, honorable mention for Richmond last year. He's a great talent. That Hakeem Hart coming from Maryland is just, I think, another great player to watch.
But he's not going to play. But I can't see him as that fifth starter, because then you got just Justin Moore's the only guard.
Right.
And you see these teams, like even that team, the reason why they were only winning by 10 at halftime is because they had some little guards that were hitting 3-pointers and they were setting screens on them along the perimeter. And the only other guard was the shooter, the kid. Yep. What's his name?
Wait, who?
The shooter on Villanova, the kid, the sophomore.
Oh, Brendan Housen.
Housen.
Yeah. So I mean, he's good, but he's not a point guard.
No. No. Well, when they lost when Brizzy transferred, that was kind of the other point guard that was going to kind of maybe hopefully run things, and then that obviously changed.
Yeah. Well, Brizzy saw the writing on the wall with Armstrong.
Right. Well, and most people would. Chris, who are you looking forward to watching this year?
Oh, Burton.
Burton?
I mean, he was the best player on Richmond. I remember watching them at the end of the season, and you could just tell he's a stud. And I didn't know anything about TJ Bamba. Admittedly, I'm not a huge Pac-12 watcher.
Yeah.
So, we can't stay up for those games most of the time. So I didn't know much about him. And I don't think Washington State didn't make the tournament last year, right?
No.
Yeah. So I didn't really know much about him. So I'm kind of excited to see him. And you mentioned Housen. I'd like to see how many minutes he gets in the rotation, because I think he is a useful piece.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if he got he should have got a little more run last year, I think. I know there are questions about his defense and things like that. I didn't think he was horrible, but he had a skill that not many other people on the team had, especially when Moore was out. So yeah. I'm kind of excited to see what he can do too with a few more minutes.
On Monday, it seemed like everybody could shoot. That's what it seemed like.
It's
nice to see. Ware's not a shooter. There's no doubt about it. But he is a defensive force.
All right, Andy, last question before we I know you have another meeting you got to go to. So what are your realistic expectations for this team? They're picked right now. They were preseason number 4 in the Big East. They have a 22 ranking right now in the AP polls. Realistically, do you think this is a team that can win the Big East title?
Yeah, I see this team being on the same level as UConn and Creighton, who are really the ones that are being picked ahead of us. And I in these Big East games, we've seen them enough to know, right? They all come down to the wire, right? They all come down with who's got the guts, right? Who's gonna take that last shot. And guess what? We got Justin Moore back for a 5th year. Okay. He can definitely do that. It looks like our boy Burton could definitely do that too. TJ Bamba, he showed he's not afraid to shoot either. And Eric Dixon, I mean, again, 5th year, we get this bonus year with this guy, right? He was such a project in his first year. Remember that? And now, I mean, the guy's got drop steps and he's got, he can shoot threes. I mean, we have so many weapons, right? So many teams, it comes down to that last, possession. And you just have to really worry about one guy, maybe 2. And I really think that we just have so many guys. I mean, you said Housen. Housen's the best shooter in the history of Villanova, the coaches say,
And you guys haven't mentioned Longino.
Yeah, Longino.
Yeah, he got a lot of
He's like
minutes.
an afterthought. It's crazy. I mean, the guy. I wish he'd grow his fro back, for the record.
Listen, Andy, I appreciate you coming on. It is great talking Villanova basketball with you. We have done it several times in the parking lot of Liberty Lake day camp where we are. And I appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. I know you got a very busy schedule, but thank you. And we appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Andy.
Take care.
I'll be listening to the rest of the show. Bye.
Yep. Thanks. That was Andy Pritikin from Liberty Lake Daycare Camp, one of the best in the area, especially the tri-state area. That's where we're from. Just great place to send your kid. I can't say enough about that camp. Before we get going into the next segment, we do have another new sponsor for the show. And they are, probably a lot of Nova fans know this, Kelly's Tap Room on East Lancaster Avenue in Bryn Mawr, PA. Kelly's Tap Room, it's your neighborhood bar serving drinks to Wildcats since 1964. Home of the Moose and good times. If you're in the area, going to see a game, 1107 East Lancaster Avenue, Bryn Mawr, PA. The zip code there is 19010. Go there. If you can't go to the game, go to Kelly's Tap Room and watch the Villanova game from there. Great place. We've been there several times, and we look forward to having them as a sponsor this year. So go check them out. All right, Chris. We talked a little bit about the game that we just saw against American. They took care of business. Upcoming now, their next game is against Lemoyne. I believe that's on the 10th, which is Saturday? Today's the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or no, Friday.
Friday night. Yep.
Friday night. Okay, so they're playing Lemoyne. I actually watched them play against Georgetown. So, what are your thoughts? You have Lemoyne. Should be an easy win, right? You would think.
Yeah, they lost 94-57 to Georgetown. Georgetown is probably going to finish last in the Big East, I would think. Would you agree with that?
Could possibly. I mean, don't get me wrong. Cooley could pull some tricks out of his sleeve and possibly get them a little bit more motivated to play.
They're in a rebuild. Lemoyne plays in the Northeast Conference, which isn't bad, and it has some decent competition. But yeah, I would think Nova will probably pull away in this game like they did against American the other night.
Now, the next game after that, I had mentioned it on last week's podcast with when we had Adriana Hahn, great from Villanova on. The third game of the season is November 13th at the Palestra. Greatest place to watch a game. We had mentioned, we were talking with Andy before the show. He's going. You can get great seats there. It's awesome. It is like a museum in that place. Yep. You play in the University of Penn. First Big East, Big Five game. What do you, I think that's the first real game for them, right? For this.
Yes. Film? Yeah. The thing about Penn, last season they had the best player in the Ivy League, and we talk about it a lot. You and I follow Princeton. Princeton won the Ivy last year, made a nice run in the NCAA tournament. Mm-hmm. For the last several years, Yale and Princeton have been the two best teams in the Ivies. However, Penn had the best player. His name was Jordan Dingle. He was the best player in the Ivy League. He actually entered the transfer portal, and he is now, because the Ivies don't allow for the extra year. They don't acknowledge the you can't play under the after you graduated under the as a graduate student.
Yeah, like the extra grad year. Yeah.
Right. They didn't give the extra year, and they didn't give the COVID year. So he entered the portal. He had a year of eligibility. He's now in St. John's with Patino, which we'll get to the Big East in a minute here. So it's not the same Penn's team as the past, but as we saw last year in these Big Five games, and I thought that Nova was better than Temple last year, and Temple knocked them off.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be a situation similar to that, where you get a highly motivated Penn team can try to knock off a ranked team at home. It's a home game for them, so should be interesting.
And after that, too, and this is the interesting part of the schedule in the beginning of the year, you have the University of Maryland right after the game. Another big game.
Big one. See how you match up against a Big Ten team.
Right.
I think that's going to be a great game. Is that also on a Friday night?
It is November 17th, a Friday night, and it's at home. It's at home, which is a big advantage.
At the Pavilion.
Yep, which is a big advantage for Villanova.
Yeah, going to be a great test. You'll see that's a good measuring stick game earlier in the year. I like it.
And to me, and we talked about this in the beginning of the show, kind of the theme of this show is the depth of this team. Playing 8, 9, 10 guys. I think playing that many this early is a great approach for Kyle Neptune this year, because like we said in the past, only playing 6, 7 guys in this rotation, playing this type of schedule, playing in the Big East games, it takes its toll on your players. So to be able to go 10, 11, I mean, like Andy had said, Chris Arch only played 4 minutes. He was the 11th guy off the bench. I mean, he started a couple games last year for us. So there's a big difference of talent that's on this team, and it's got to be very exciting for everybody at Villanova right now.
Yes, and I think that's a change in the positive, for the positive. The last 2 seasons, remember the non-conference schedule in November and December the last 2 years has been ridiculous. Mm-hmm. This year it's also difficult, but not to the level where it was the last 2 seasons. The last year with Jay was really tough, and then even last year when they played the Nike tournament in Oregon, they had some really tough games in the beginning of the season. They had the awful travel. Remember, they had the game in Baylor, and then they had to go to
they had 13 days in a row, I believe.
Right, they had the Baylor game, and then they had to go to Creighton. It was a terrible travel schedule. So, I think that with the deeper bench, it can only help.
I think that's what we always. I think if you go back and watch past episodes of the Nova Nation podcast, one of the things that we always question, and we didn't really question too much about Jay Wright, obviously. I mean, Hall of Fame coach, but that was one of the questions that we did used to talk about, was him not really going that deep into the bench. And I've been watching the Big East since I was 5 years old. I know what a toll these games take. Even if you're playing, the Georgetowns, the DePauls, the teams that, aren't really front runners, they're still tough games. Yeah. Teams going to these different places and playing, and to be able to have the depth that they have, I think is really, really something that is very exciting for this year. More exciting than obviously last year. And I'm really, really interested. My big thing is I don't want to say I felt bad for Kyle Neptune last year, because he did what he had to do with what he had there and what he had, to play with.
It was tough with the injury with Moore. So you knew you weren't going to have him till February, right? Right. And then when Whitmore broke his thumb. Yep. Yeah, they were shorthanded, and they lost those games early on in November, which we were like, oh my goodness, like these were losses that they never would have had in the past. I remember that the game, who'd they lose to? Portland, and we were like, when's the last time Nova's lost to like a mid-major? Yep. And it had been years. literally years that they lost to a mid-major team. So we were like, we thought maybe there was something not quite right with the team. But like Andy was saying, like towards the end of the season, once Moore came back, the team started playing a lot better, and they rallied a bit. It was just too late as far as they had too many losses already on the schedule to get in the tournament. But
right,
they did improve as the season went on.
Right, and I think this year, now with these transfers, now with he can really put his imprint on this team. Kyle Neptune is what I'm talking about. So I'm very, very excited to see what he does, how he coaches this team. He has mentioned in articles, all these transfers coming in, they have already bought into the program, the way that Nova has their program set up. So it should be very interesting. Real quick, before we get into another segment, I do want to also talk about the Let's Talk Sports Network. If you haven't already subscribed to the network, please go on the Let's Talk Sports Network YouTube page and subscribe. Hit the notifications button. Chris, you do an awesome, incredible NFC East show every Wednesday night. You're going to be
Thank you.
After this. That's a great show for all your NFC Philadelphia Eagles. You got a lot to talk about this week, but you do a great show. There's tons of great shows on that network. So please subscribe, hit the notifications button so you know when your favorite show is coming on. Chris, real quick, before we talk a little bit about the Big East and kind of wrap things up with that, I do want to talk a little bit about the girls team. Last week, I had Adriana Hahn on, so we definitely talked in depth about the team and the expectation for the team this year. They have their first game coming up against Portland. Should be a very, very good game. This team, again, has a lot of potential. I mentioned it to Adriana last year that this team has really started going in an upward trajectory. Obviously, it's going to be very tough to match 30 wins like they had last year, losing a player like Maddie Segrist. But you got players like Lucy Olson, who she is the Mark Armstrong to me on the women's side, because I'm very, very interested to see how she plays, if she takes the next step and becomes that true leader of point guards that Villanova's had. To me, man, all these great point guards, both on the women's and men's side that has played, one of the things that I believe they all have in common, and Andy touched on it with Gillespie, is that leadership, that coach's mentality on the court. And when I talked to Adriana last week, if you haven't watched that episode, go back and look at the season premiere. The way that she talks, I mean, she truly does talk like a coach. And the way that her mind thinks, the way that she dissects things, it's incredible. So that's a great watch if you haven't gone and watched that episode. But we are very, very looking forward to the women's game as well, and having some guests on throughout the year for the women's team to talk that up as well. But their first game, like I said, is against Portland. Hopefully it'll be a win, start the season off right, and we'll see who steps up on that team. They're definitely going to need some scoring on that team in place of Maddie. So, Chris, let's talk Big East as a whole. I had mentioned it to Andy, and I asked him for what he thought his expectations were, and he was saying challenging for a Big East title.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the Big East poll has Villanova 4th ranked. They have Marquette as number 1, Creighton is number 2, and UConn is number 3. I watched the Creighton game last night, mm-hmm. and I'm telling you, if they shoot the way they did last night, they are going to be a tough team, very, very tough team, because they have a ton of shooters on that team. What's the guy's name? Brian
Nembhard?
Nembhard. Great coming back. He's going to be a presence in the middle. That's a team to me that I think is going to give Villanova the most trouble.
Oh, you're talking about Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Kalkbrenner, that's it.
Yeah, he's the center. He's the 7'1".
Nembhard went out to Gonzaga.
And
right?
we'll get to him later. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts? All right, so those are the top 4 in this poll.
Yeah, those are the top four. I think they're definitely the best four. I think people are underrating UConn a little bit, and I'll tell you why. Last year they had a center. Okay, he was coming off the bench. He was probably he was a 5-star. I'm sorry, his name escapes me right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's awesome. Okay. They also got Cam Spencer from Rutgers in the portal.
Yes.
This guy can fill it up. He's a pure scorer. He wasn't. It was a surprise that he left Rutgers. Okay. He's going to replace the scoring that they lost last year. I think UConn, to me, I would almost put them first.
Okay.
Marquette with Kolick, good coaching. They play good D. They have a good system. And then Creighton with Kalkbrenner, and even their wings defend and they're long. It's a tall team. They gave Nova trouble in the Big East tournament last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying Nova can't beat any of those teams, but they're all going to be really tough, I think. And then as far as down the line, the other teams, I guess you always have to be aware of Xavier with Miller. We don't know what St. John's is yet. I mean, the whole team's new with Patino coming in.
Coming back, yeah.
I know Providence, losing Cooley is enormous. He was that program for many, many years. And I don't know what to make of Seton Hall, to be honest. I know Holloway had a tough year last year.
Yep.
He didn't add much in the portal and recruiting. So, right now I'm looking at the 4 teams plus Xavier. That's where I'm at, and maybe Providence.
Cooley now at Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very good coach. Maybe that team gets coached up a little bit more than what they were in the past.
I think recruiting is their issue.
Right.
With it was under Ewing. Either guys didn't want to play for him, or they weren't as aggressive as they have been in getting recruits. And I don't know if they were hamstrung by academic standards there. Hard to say. But maybe Cooley will be able to recruit a little better there.
What teams do you think right now give Nova the most trouble?
Creighton.
Creighton.
Yeah, Creighton. Nice. Yeah. That's because I think they can compete with Marquette. I think they can now. They have athletic enough wings that the kids that they added in the portal, I think they can match up good with Marquette. UConn, like I said, that center is going to be a problem. I wish I'll have to look up his name, but and Kalkbrenner, I mean, he's not the most graceful player out there. You look at him and you're kind of like, okay, he's kind of gangly, he's awkward at times, but man, can that dude block shots? And they throw him a ton of lobs on the offensive end, and they have shooters around him.
Yep,
like they got Shireman. He's flashed in the tournament last year. Remember, we like Princeton a lot. They boat raced Princeton in that Sweet 16 game.
That's what shooting can do. That's what shooting can do for you. And when you look at this Nova team, like you said, I think it does match up pretty well because you're going to have Dixon be a focal point in the middle, and hopefully these guys are athletic enough, able to shoot enough that they're going to cause some problems spacing wise on the court. I think that's always the big issue. I think that was an issue last year with Villanova, was some spacing issues with Slater not necessarily being the most reliable 3-point shooter, and Caleb Daniels having kind of his ups and downs. So hopefully you have that little bit of more reliability. I got another quick question for you, Chris. Love him or hate him? What are your thoughts on Danny Hurley, coach of the UConn?
I mean, yeah, he's definitely hateable, but man, he can coach. He's a big crybaby. You know what I mean? He's that tough guy act. It's kind of annoying. But, boy, he's built a good program there. And, the guy I'm thinking, his name is Donovan Clingan.
Okay, yes.
7'2". He flashed last year. You saw the dude. He's from Connecticut. He's a homegrown guy. Man, he's going to be a problem.
Yep.
And then you got Cam Spencer from Rutgers. But yeah, Hurley's kind of, one of those guys you love to hate, but you have to respect his game.
Yeah.
And the he's got a ring now. He's got a title. So, and they're going to be good again this year.
Well, listen, he comes from a great coaching tree, obviously. I have all the respect for his dad and what he has done and built. I mean, right here in New Jersey, St. Anthony's, probably the one of the greatest programs of all time. The
best ever in New Jersey.
Yeah. And nationwide. I mean, nationwide too. You can stand the test of time. So, but like you, there's times when it's very easy to not like Danny Hurley. And a lot of that whining, I don't think he whined as much as he did last year. I definitely think he listened to some of I think him coming to the Big East was one of the best moves he could have done, because I definitely think the coaches and him watching how these coaches, because, he broke in when, Jay Wrights were there, all these guys that he can kind of watch. I definitely think he has toned down his whininess, if that's something to say. Yeah, I definitely, I'm interested to see how he does, because now there's going to be a lot more pressure on him, obviously, this year.
Yep, absolutely.
Chris, real quick, we can go into this on a next week's show or whatever, so we can go a little bit more in depth in this. But I do have a quick question for you. So they came out, the AP poll.
Yeah.
Top 25 did come out. Obviously, Kansas, Purdue, Duke, Michigan's up there, Marquette's up there, Houston, UConn's in the top 10. There are three schools from the Big East in the top 10.
Yeah.
Rankings, Marquette being 6th, UConn being 8th, Creighton being 9. Obviously, then I talked about Villanova being 22nd. What are your thoughts on an over or maybe underrated team out of that top 25?
Well, you got to start overrated with Michigan State. They already lost. They lost the other night to James Madison, to a mid-major team at home.
Yep.
And in general, the Big Ten is down.
Yep.
Yeah, the Big Ten's a little down. I mean, you have Purdue, you have Michigan State. We'll see about Illinois. We'll see about Ohio State. We'll see about Wisconsin. Michigan is not expected to do much this year. Rutgers is not expected to do much this year. So the Big Ten as a whole is down a little bit. My underrated team, and I think that we're so used to talking about them, and no one's talking about them now, is Gonzaga. Okay, that's the team I'm looking at. And the reason why I'm looking at them is Ryan Nembhard.
Yep.
That's why I'm looking at them, because I think that dude's a winner. I think he's a baller. And I think he's going to play great out there, that wide open style that they like to play. And I think he's going to have all kinds of freedom. And I have very high expectations for him. And I think Gonzaga is almost under the radar. No one's talking about them because the last few years they've had such high expectations. Especially last year, Drew Timme came back and everyone was like, "Oh my God!" But and they always seem to have a breakdown in the tournament. But I think they're almost like underrated, But they also, going back to the Ivy League, they play Yale. Yale is good.
Yeah.
Yale is legit good. They have dudes. They have ballers on that team. They're athletic. I've seen them in person against Princeton. They're really good. They're actually, because Princeton lost a couple guys. One guy went in the Langborn went in the portal. He's in Northwestern now, and then their best player went to play overseas. So Yale's favored to win the Ivies. Could they give Gonzaga a game? We'll find out.
Yeah,
we'll find out. That's going to be a good game.
you got. I mean, we talk about Gonzaga being. I mean, they're ranked 19th, so that's one of the lowest that they've started out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think no one's kind of like because Drew Timme left. I guess everyone thinks they're going to fall apart, but I think the Nembhard addition is huge.
I totally agree with you. Should be interesting, and like I said, in maybe next week's show, future shows, we'll talk a little bit more about the top 25 as a whole. We'll have some
sleepers.
Some sleepers and some picks. We could even go into some game picks and some betting picks that we might have for the weekend coming up as we get started. But Chris, you have coming up shortly the NFC East roundtable.
That's right.
So everybody go switch over to Let's Talk Sports and watch that. I actually have at 9:00 as well the AFC West roundtable show that I do with Omar and Lisa. So we will be doing that tonight. So we have tons of podcasts out there and available for you. So like I said, please go on and subscribe, or hit that notifications button. I want to thank Andy Pritikin for coming on from Liberty Lake Day Camp. He was a great guest. Knows a lot.
Great.
Yep. And it's fun to hear some of the stories that he's able to tell from Justin. Chris, thank you as always for coming on. I appreciate it, and look forward to next week's show. And everybody, once again, thanks for watching. We appreciate it, and let's go Nova.